Welcome to Daily Gospel Breakdown. Today we're going through Mark chapter 10, breaking down the historical context, deeper themes, what it reveals about Jesus, and how it still connects to our lives today. Let's get into it. Mark 11. The chapter begins with Jesus Christ entering Jerusalem riding on a donkey while crowds spread cloaks and branches before him, shouting, "Hosanna!" This moment is often called the Triumphal Entry. To modern readers, it can seem peaceful and symbolic, but to people at the time, it carried major meaning. Riding into Jerusalem this way connected back to the prophecy in the book of Zechariah about Israel's king coming humbly on a donkey. Many people in the crowd likely believed Jesus was the long-awaited Messiah and hoped he was about to bring political liberation and restore Israel's kingdom. But once again in Mark, people's expectations of the Messiah do not fully match the mission Jesus actually came to accomplish. Right after entering the city, Jesus looks around the temple and then leaves for the night. The next day comes one of the strangest moments in the gospel. Jesus curses a fig tree because it has no fruit. At first, this can sound confusing or unfair, especially because Mark even says it was not the season for figs. But many Christians believe the fig tree is acting as a living picture of spiritual fruitlessness. In the Old Testament, Israel is sometimes compared to a fig tree or vineyard, and the tree here appears healthy outwardly because it has leaves, but it lacks fruit. The event happens right before Jesus cleanses the temple, which strongly suggests the two moments are connected. Jesus then enters the temple and overturns the tables of the money changers and those selling sacrifices. This is one of the clearest moments of righteous anger in the Gospels. The problem was not simply buying and selling itself, since animals were needed for sacrifices and pilgrims traveled long distances. The deeper issue was corruption, exploitation, and turning worship into profit and empty religious performance. Jesus says, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers." Mark's Gentile audience likely would have especially noticed the phrase, "for all nations," because it points toward God's purposes extending beyond Israel alone. The fig tree connection becomes clearer afterward when the disciples see it withered from the roots. Many Christians see this as symbolizing judgment on outward religion that appears alive externally but lacks true spiritual fruit inwardly. Throughout Mark, Jesus repeatedly confronts hypocrisy, hardness of heart, and religious systems that look holy outwardly while drifting away from God internally. Jesus then teaches about faith, prayer, and forgiveness. He tells the disciples that faith can move mountains and emphasizes praying with trust in God. But he immediately connects prayer with forgiveness, saying people must forgive others when they pray. That connection is important because throughout the Gospels, genuine faith is never presented as merely intellectual belief or outward ritual. It affects the heart, relationships, humility, and the way people treat others. The chapter ends with religious leaders questioning Jesus' authority. They ask who gave him the authority to do these things, especially after the temple cleansing. Jesus responds by asking about the authority of John the Baptist, putting the leaders in a position where they are afraid to answer honestly because of political pressure and fear of the crowd. Once again, Mark exposes a repeated theme. Many people are less concerned with truth itself than with protecting status, control, image, or influence. Mark 11 ultimately focuses heavily on the difference between outward appearance and genuine spiritual fruit. The crowds praise Jesus enthusiastically but often misunderstand him. The temple appears religious while becoming corrupted internally, and the fig tree looks alive outwardly while lacking fruit. The chapter repeatedly asks whether faith is truly producing transformation, humility, prayer, forgiveness, and genuine devotion, or whether it has become mostly outward appearance without inward reality. Thanks for joining me for today's Daily Gospel Breakdown. If this study helped you better understand the chapter or gave you something meaningful to reflect on, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. I plan on continuing through the Gospel of Mark, chapter by chapter, one day at a time. I'd also love to hear your thoughts and interpretations in the comments. See you in the next study.